Hi, everybody. So we're going to give it a couple minutes and we will be beginning, but we always like to start early so that folks can see that we're live. And I've got the comments. And Lisa, are you going to be watching it on Facebook too, or?
I can do that. Yep.
We'll both be paying attention. I know how much you love those comments, so.
I am a commenter. I like to get my little 2 cents in, and if I can't be like actually on the call talking, then I'm like in the chat talking.
Yeah, totally. And I've put that you would want to have these questions from the workbook with you. We won't be going into them in great depth.
Speaking of me talking, there we go.
And I hadn't even thought of posting the link to get that workbook, but I know it's on the Facebook feed. So as we wait for folks, hi Jim. Greetings from Tampa. He's in Florida too.
Yay! Jim, I'm just on the other coast, a little bit south of you, but pretty much straight across. We just moved to Stewart almost a year ago. So we're on the Atlantic side. Beaches are better where Jim is. Don't tell the people around here that.
That's awesome. Yeah, welcome. Introduce yourself. Share where you're calling in from. We'd love to see that and let us know. And I also am just posting the guide as a reminder to have that in front of you if you want to make sure that you've answered these questions. If you print that out, it's all the easier to have those. And we'll just be kind of bouncing in and out of those questions. We've both got them in front of us, but we have a lot of different things that we're going to cover, and we're relying on he said truth. Jim said truth.
So I've already established that I'm honest. That's a good way to start.
Exactly. Welcome. We have 7 people. So if you want to let us know where you're coming in from, it helps to keep it interactive and help us to keep making sure that we're answering questions or focused on things that are going to be interesting to you, because we have some ideas, but we would love to hear from you. So definitely give us your comments and reactions as we go. And we'll give it another minute or so and we'll get started. And I just brought this copy of the workbook up so that you could have that handy if you want to print it out or have it on your computer while we're going along. And maybe you've already answered the questions. So awesome. And yeah, I'm excited to play with eCam because I get to bring up these other parts of my questions, and it's really good. So welcome everyone. Thanks for joining us. We're going to be talking about emergency business planning, and Lisa and I both have different experiences after the last downturn, and we want to share about some of our experiences. We want to encourage you to be asking yourself questions. What we hope, is going to happen is you're going to walk away with some ideas about things to help yourself, to prepare better, to understand the ups and downs as we go into an economic cycle that I don't think anyone can deny is not what we were expecting 3 months ago. So how can we take good care of ourselves? So I'm Lisa Peterson, and I'm welcoming Lisa Duke, who many people have seen because she's always around and helping. Normally on the other side, helping me like, hey, what about this post or what about this detail? Because she is really, really good at the details. And that's one of the reasons why I feel like this conversation is going to be so good. And I want to share just a few things. Lisa and I know each other from the FinCon community. She's a financial coach. She began fintech, being in the fintech. How long ago was that when you started studying?
Ooh, about 180 years ago.
Oh, that recent.
No, this was like 1997. So that was my first real grown-up job after college. And they didn't even have fintech then, but it's what we would now call fintech. I worked for a credit card processor.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And you also have been running an IT business with your husband for several years. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
probably about 15 years. So we actually started in 2005. And we got lucky in the sense that we managed to inherit a lot of clients who had worked with my husband at another company that was kind of in the process of getting sold and going under. And as part of that, they actually fired a bunch of their clients. They got some advice from a business coach. They always say, get rid of your bottom clients. So they sent them a letter and they're like, you're not our client anymore. And it was right as we were starting up our business. So it was like gangbusters right out the gate. And we had Coca-Cola as a client, again, that was inherited through one of the partners in the business. So it started off really great, but with the benefit of history, we know 2005 was only a couple of years before 2008. So it was like, whee!
Got it. Yeah, totally. And that's what we're gonna be talking a little bit more about that. And really, Leisa, I think we met 2 years ago, maybe through FinCon, and she came to Sedona and did the Sedona experience with me and hung out a couple times now, actually, and come to retreats. And what we were talking about earlier today is the fact that we have similar strengths and that we're both, if you look at the disc chart, we both have high I. So we like influencing, we like bringing people together, we like the social component, but I have a higher S and Leisa has a higher C. And so we were comparing notes because she's the one who catches the details. And a lot of things that I do I just know they drive her a little bit nuts because I'm very free flowing.
Lisa's like, let's add a session. I'm like, that is not on the published schedule.
Yes. And I'm like, I think we should add a bonus. And Lisa's like, are you kidding me? You're messing up the schedule. So I'm so sorry, Leisa, that I like to give away so many bonuses and special.
You're too generous.
And it's fun to know the differences. And even that conversation that I think we're going to have today will echo some of those different kind of perspectives that we have. And what we wanted to do, we both had looked through these questions. Anything you want to add before we dive in that just you even kind of introduction comments or things?
I don't think so. I've got some tips that we took from our last experience that helped us get where we are today. So I would love to share those, but we'll get to them when we get to them. So yeah, go right ahead.
That's great. What I think when I put this out there, so just to kind of make it more clear, I've been trying to get feedback, right, from the community of what's interesting to you. What do you want to learn more about? And one of the things that came to the top was talking about strategies, talking about things that could be done in the face of uncertainty with our businesses. And, these aren't necessarily like, oh, step 1, step 2, step 3. What we're going to do is give you some of our own personal experiences and what we've been through. And our goal is to help as much as possible to give you maybe some references, some ideas if things do change in what you're doing. And I think we talked about this last week with Jenny, the fact that the more we can shore up our own business and how we're approaching our business and have contingency plans, and maybe we have to deleverage some things that aren't working right now, right? Let some products go that aren't fitting into the new world. Like those are the sorts of things that I think both of us will probably talk about, the importance of making timely decisions and being so in tune with what's going on in your environment that you don't sit on things. Because as a business owner, like the speed of your decisions and the wisdom that you apply to those decisions and the lack of fear-based decisions are going to pay off in such big ways. And that's really what we're trying to inspire right now. So thank you. So Tina was saying the topic is timely, and Gloria likes my hair, and she said hi. So I'm hearing you. So even if you were to look at the worksheet and some of the questions, we didn't get into the personal ones last week so much. But I really just want to encourage you, if you have not gone through these questions and asked them to yourself and been really honest and kind of taken the opportunity, because what I think you'll notice in the way I structured these questions is I want you to uncover the things that you may not have paid attention to in the past that now you need to. I also want you to pay attention to the fact that COVID may have changed some things. And if you wait to look into these questions until later, until you have more time or you have more headspace, there's a good chance you're going to miss the fact that you should not be focusing on something or change your attention towards, another product or another opportunity. I have found, and especially going through 2008, and I'll let you share about your experiences, is in 2008, I don't know, I'll give you a little story because I think this is very interesting. I actually, I'm listening to a book right now about Ford and Ford, their turnaround in Ford. And interesting to me because they're going through this exact time of what the timeline was like back in the last recession. And even Ford did not understand what was coming. But because I was super tied into the mortgage industry at the time, and I was watching the dynamics of what was happening and had a very intuitive attention to there are a lot of things that don't make any sense. So back in 2006, June of 2006, I came home from work one day as a mortgage banker, and I looked my husband in the eyes and I said, we have to sell everything. And he's like, what are you talking about? And I'm like, we have to deleverage as much as possible because if we don't, we will lose everything. I just can tell it. Everything's going to fall apart. And I didn't know at the time that I was in such a minority of how my intuition was guiding me to make decisions that helped me actually save. We would have lost everything. Just to be clear, if we had not begun the process of letting go of some things that we needed to sell immediately, and we've even been looking at that again in our lives right now of what do we need to do to make sure that we've got a runway of, I would say, 3 years. That's how I feel right now. How do you take care of yourself over the next 3 years? But because we did that, we were able to sell property at the high rather than the low. We were able to make sure that we had cash in the bank when things started falling apart. Unfortunately, even that, we had another situation happen where in 2008, that money that we got from the sale of the house went into an account that was put into what's called auction rate preferred securities. And that market basically disappeared overnight. So we got a call from our banker saying that money's gone. And I'll tell you now, sitting where we sit, when I'm sharing here and I invite Leisa to do the same, we are not messing around. These are real things that can happen. You take care of one problem and another one gets created. And when you are not ignorant to what's going on and you're like, holy cow, that's big. What do I need to do differently right now to help myself? You can avoid problems that you don't have to live through because you make better decisions early on. You get feedback, you talk to people, and you trust your intuition. That's, for me, I had no proof whatsoever that things were going to fall apart. Yet my husband trusted me, listened to me, and we went about a certain plan of action. And it was totally intuitively based, and the fact that I was in the industry and I knew things weren't making sense. So these times, I think what I want to encourage everyone to do is pay close attention to your intuition. That there are things, there's a difference, and this would be a whole other class, but there is a difference between fear-based intuition and heart-based intuition. In that moment, I knew it was heart-based intuition. And, oh, by the way, this wouldn't be pretty if you don't listen to me. So, so Leisa, do you want to share a little bit about even your experience? And then we can talk into the more meat of it.
Yeah, we had none of the foresight that you had. I don't think I even fully understood at the time that economic cycles were a thing. We were pretty young at that point. I'm trying to think. I graduated from college in 96, and this was 2005. So I would have been in my, early 30s as we were starting the business. And we just were so in the zone. Those of you that have started a business or are in the process of starting a business, it's just trying to make things happen, trying to go, 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 go. And we were not paying any attention to anything that was going on. I did not have the benefit of a meditation practice like you have. I'm just now starting to kind of key more into my intuition. So we were totally blindsided. And going back to the point about cycles, the way I think about it now is when you make pasta on the stove, it's like if you're not really paying attention, you put it all the way on hot because you're like, I need it to boil. And then you walk away and you come back and it's like big mess. And so what do? You like panic and you go the other way and you just like turn the heat off. And then you come back and you're like, noodles, cook, noodles, cook. I think that's kind of how the economy works, is it's like it's going, it's going, it's going, it's going, it's going, and then it'll boil over. And we as humans overreact to whatever the precipitating incident is, and we make it worse. So the thing that happened in the mortgage industry was real, and then that affected, like, I was in Atlanta at the time, so like North Georgia, the people who put carpet into new homes, it affected those businesses. Then it affected their suppliers, their vendors. So that was all real, but then on top of that, you get the panic of people that are selling because it's down and they're like, oh God, we're going to lose everything. And the people who stop spending, you want to stop spending to some degree, but the people that go completely nuts. So if you look at the stock market over time, it's a gradual upward line because you're getting the benefit of all the people in corporate America doing their best. But it's like overheat, overcool, overheat, overcool. But we were just not sensitive to any of that. So when we were in 2005, 2006, we didn't understand, hey, these are the good times. You should, like, things are better than what is probably normal. You should be putting away cash. You should not think you're a business genius. You should just understand, like, conditions are favorable. We didn't get any of that. So then when it went down, we didn't really we understood that it was the overall economy. But there was also a lot of guilt and blame and shame and that just impairs. I know you've talked a lot about scarcity and how that tunnels you in. And when there's what's going on in the world, there's the actions you need to take. But when you layer on top of that all the guilt and the blame and the shame, we had talked friends into coming to work for us, like leaving jobs with bigger, more established companies, coming to work for us. And when we finally got to the point where we had to let them go, it took me years to recover from that emotionally. So I don't know how you prevent that other than, again, maybe some of these mindfulness practices and also understanding even the best business owner is going to be impacted. So trying to release some of the guilt around that, right? You teach a lot about we're all doing our best and it's all for your best. And I look back on it now and, it's almost like a BuzzFeed article. It's like, woman almost loses everything because of that, becomes millionaire. Had we not gone through that process of really shifting our business into sort of a future business, everything remote, everything online, very lean, very low expenses, that would not have allowed us then to take advantage of the recovery. And so making the changes in our personal expenses and in our business expenses, and then keeping them at that end of the world level as things improved is really what allowed us to stack cash, to invest, and it's what got us where we are today. But, in the moment, you're just like in this panic place. So it's go ahead.
Yeah, that's amazing. I mean, you brought up so many good points. One question I just had for you is, did you feel like you delayed the letting go of the friends for longer than you should have?
The letting go of the friends, and honestly, this makes me sound like a horrible person, but we let go of the friends before we let go of the stuff. Even harder was letting go of the big house and the really fancy pickup truck that my husband drove for no discernible reason. He's still upset. The truck's name was Lord Truckington. He is still not right. He'll be talking about this on his deathbed, but I made him sell Lord Truckington. But we had a big SUV. We sold everything. We sold everything, everything, everything. I just got to a point where I was like, this is disgusting. Like, I'm putting all of this effort and all of this emotion into maintaining, like, everything is fine, everything is fine, everything is fine. Everything was not fine.
Mm-hmm.
And so we let it all go. We moved to the unfashionable side of Atlanta. We had one car, a used Honda Civic that we shared, which anybody in Atlanta will tell you that's not possible. But we did. It was, as a matter of fact, we got a free car out of it because everybody at my husband's work was so disturbed by this image of him driving his bike into work, riding his bike into work, that his boss was like, do you need he worked for a city government. They're like, do you need one of our pool cars to get you around? He's like, no, it's good. I'm getting exercise. They're like, take the car.
Right. So then you were like, we have a car. Look at that. Magic.
Yeah, like now we have two cars, but only one payment. And our payment was like $200 a month. The big thing that was the reason Lord Truckington had to go was when we moved from one side of Atlanta to the other, the truck payment was more than our mortgage payment. And I was like, Lord Truckington's, he's got to go. This is ridiculous.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think what I'm hearing from you is there was a realization that if you didn't downsize and make some big adjustments, it was going to get ugly. So you'd rather consciously make those adjustments than lose the business or have to make some even more difficult sacrifices. So I think both of us, you know, in different ways were adjusting. Like we, you know, I've never downsized and regretted it. Like, okay, the minute I say that, one thing, moving from a 4,000 square foot house to a barely 1,400 square foot house with a now 15-year-old teenager, 2 bedrooms, like, yeah, there's something there. Like that wasn't totally in the plan. We liked being downsized so much that we were like, everything's awesome, but actually it really wasn't for my teenager. So that kind of made the change. But most of the time when we downsize, we realize that we can actually save a lot more. We can have more freedom. We can enjoy life more. I mean, there are those benefits. There's personal downsizing. And then what I'm hearing from you is there's a business downsizing. And even before that, I think I love what you said about dealing with the guilt and the blame and the shame. So like, it's so weird how this works because I don't care who you are, but even though this all just came in suddenly, if you're caught in a difficult situation, some people aren't, you know, right now everything's fine, but let's say all of a sudden you're like, wow, this isn't working. Typically, the tendency is to go into one of those 3 places: blame, guilt, or shame. And what I'm hearing you say is if you do that, you're going to be so distracted by that mindset that you're probably not going to make great decisions when things are coming at you. Anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, and I think part of the reason we had some of those expenses is I had this thing about it need to be a real business. Like, I don't know who I was trying to prove what to, but like, well, we need to have office space. We need to have employees. We need to have this. We need to have that. Like all of this stuff, people and stuff. And at the end of the day, none of that, first off, none of that is anything that your client wants to pay for. And second, none of it really made a difference. Like we were paying for physical office space, and the vision was that clients and potential clients would come to us and they would sit in the conference room and they would admire the beautiful, you know, building and think how successful we were. And then we would do these presentations. Well, this is Metro Atlanta. Nobody wants to sit in traffic to get sold to, even if it's people that they really like and, you know, are interested in what they have to say. So between the tragicness of the traffic, this is one good thing that came out of the tragicness of the traffic in Atlanta. We were very early between the traffic situation and then the fact that my husband has this IT background. We were very early with webinars, online. And so when COVID hit, it was kind of business as usual for all of our companies. Now, sort of to be determined long term what the fallout will be with our clients. I don't think this is over yet. But just in terms of like, how do we do business? It's like, well, we weren't, nobody was coming to see us. We weren't going to see anybody anyway. And that's one of the things that I would encourage people to see this as an opportunity to kind of get with the program, right? Like the future is going down a certain track, and I won't pretend that I totally know what it is, but I think it's going to be about all of us. We've actually all been really wasteful in ways that we're completely blind to. If you think, like, I remember being a kid and I was like, I don't understand. Like, the school has people in it during the week and nobody on the weekend, and the church has people in it on the weekend and nobody during the week. Like, school sits empty all summer long. And I know I'm like oversimplifying. I know there's church staff and there's Wednesday night services, but for the most part, like, there's a lot of waste, and we're heating all these spaces, we're cooling all these spaces. It was the same thing with we had a 4-bedroom house, and like 3 of the bedrooms had those marks in the carpets from when we had like vacuumed it once. It's like nobody ever went in there. Yeah. And the thing that got me was not the space, it was the idea of heating and cooling that giant space. Like, I'm paying to air condition rooms that like I could just chop a layer off my house and be fine. Yeah. So I think there's a lot of sort of waste built into our society. And if we use these opportunities to get really lean and really efficient, and then as we go into the next upturn, which will happen at some point, stay lean, stay efficient, and then that's where you open up that margin to save, to invest, to actually do something with your money instead of just spend it.
Interesting. I'm totally with you. And these are those sorts of pockets where people say, how do I get ahead? Like, I'm never feeling like I have that extra money at the end of the month. And what you're saying is, a lot of people, and I know you've also studied FI, so financially independent, retire early, and maybe this is something you could also add in here, kind of what you've learned from that community. But the idea is how lean can you go so that you can save a lot of money and still have a comfortable lifestyle. I mean, that's where there's some people are like, cut out everything, and then someday you'll be able to quit your job and run off and do whatever you want. But probably there's more balanced perspective. And even in these times right now, I think we're seeing that we can cut. And then when you cut and you find that new normal, then when your income rises, or what I'd love to get into next is talking about just new opportunities and how we can kind of think about what the world could look like and some opportunities for people. We could just run some scenarios, like put our heads together to give folks an idea. Because I think what we're saying is, go lean, figure out how to cut expenses, tighten your belt, do what you can to take care of yourself. And that will give you opportunity no matter what happens as the economy rises, where you could potentially be saving, especially if you use that same methodology, like the millionaire next door, drive a used car, live in a house that's less expensive than what you could afford, like all these decisions. Then you have room to save money. And this is where big wealth can be built. And Lisa's an example of that. Like, all of a sudden we went from not having a lot to saving money and building wealth for ourselves because of the downturn. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah. And we were saving for retirement all along, and we could have stopped. We got to this point. I remember my husband and I having a conversation where it was like, okay, I can't make these numbers work anymore. The choice is, we've got to downsize or we've got to stop saving for retirement. And honestly, I think most people would just stop saving for retirement. Like, we were in our 30s, I think, at the time. Yeah, we would have been in our 30s at the time. So it's like we got forever till retirement. But I was so focused on like, nope, we've got to get some, ground under us, some foundation, some stability. Everything must go. Let's just get small. Like, you kind of realize, like, you fight to keep those things, and then you start to wonder, like, after a while, you don't even miss it. You go through this, like, I don't want to let go of it. And then I've let go of it and I miss it. And then you're like, what were we doing? Like, I think a lot of people have probably seen this with restaurants. This is my weakness. I don't like to cook, but I do like to eat. So there was this like big thing when COVID first happened of like, oh God, the restaurants, I can't, I don't want to cook. I don't, like all this drama. And so I didn't want to let go of it, but I had to. And then now we let go of it and we sort of mourn it. Like, oh, this is terrible. I have to figure out food every night. And then now it's just kind of normal. And so again, this is where the catch is then when things start to pick up. Like we're still going to go out and eat some, support our local restaurants. We want them to be around when we have guests in from out of town, but you don't go back up to that big level. You go like now it becomes a once a week thing instead of an every other night thing.
Yeah, it's beautiful. It's
Mm-hmm.
beautiful. Let's shift gears and talk about opportunities because I
Mm-hmm.
think what I do always want people to be thinking about, and I think this is where we can get stuck in, the fear of like what the current situation looks like, rather than thinking, okay, well, if there are changes happening, so we can just pick, I mean, any kind of field that we want. Like think about a business. I mean, coaching even. We could talk about
Mm-hmm.
coaching. It's a little harder because there's so many different coaches.
Mm-hmm.
Um, what would be a good example? And maybe if somebody here on the call has an example you want to run us through, because sometimes it's even better to have it not be so close to us. But I
Mm.
want to run through how to think differently about a situation where you're like, I don't know if this business is going to continue or I'm seeing some signs of it shifting. So if we get any suggestions, I'll run with it. But Lisa, anything coming to mind, an example?
I think a lot of it is about figuring out, okay, what are my skills and what does the market now need? And again, if you're in blame, shame, guilt, panic mode, it's very hard to see that. But if you can kind of let some of that go and take a broader position, even if you've been laid off, you still have skills. You have whatever you were doing, you have whatever you did before that, you have whatever you went to college for, because most of us aren't doing what we got our degree in. So you have skills, and the question is, what skills do I have and what needs are there? So people still have to eat, and people like me still don't want to prepare their own food. So maybe the restaurant is just not going to come back. But maybe what you can do is home delivery, catering, pickup, those kind of services where you're still preparing food for people, but you don't have the overhead of the physical space. The other thing we talked about, the wasted space earlier, there's a place in town that serves breakfast and lunch.
Mm-hmm.
And and they have this beautiful patio and they're
Mm-hmm.
right downtown and they're closed for dinner. If they don't want to open for dinner, that's fine, but you would think they could sublease that space to like a bar restaurant, someplace to do live music.
Yeah.
So, what are the ways that we can, sort of buddy up, get a
Right.
roommate, even if it's in the business
Well,
context?
because what
Mm-hmm.
I want to make sure we're focusing on is not just as a consumer saving money. I actually want to
Mm-hmm.
talk about like as business owners, how we're
Mm-hmm.
going to be reconfiguring our business for the future. And like I feel fortunate because I'm focused on money and so are you, but I think what I'm looking at is we've got a couple comments coming through and I know you're looking at these too. So
Yeah.
what do I love to do? This is my approach. How can I use my
Mm-hmm.
skills to do what I love differently? So there's one. Also, like I used to do fashion classes and one-to-one in-person image consulting. So there's another. And then
Mm-hmm.
what are my skills and what does the market now need? So do one of those jump out at you, Lisa? Because I
Yeah,
want to
yeah. Let's play
brainstorm
with
about something, a specific example.
Claire's a little bit because from what she said, you can totally do that online.
Yes. Well, some of them. So okay, so Claire's talking about image consulting
Hmm.
and what you would be doing in this situation. I want to start right at the beginning of kind of where you're at, and everybody, this would apply to you of the exercise that you could do, and Lisa, add in as we go. So let's say you get. I love big pieces of paper and columns. I'm like all
Hmm.
for it. So on one column, you're listing out all of the things that you love to do, like you're just
Hmm.
so passionate about and you're so
Hmm.
good at, and you've gotten great
Hmm.
feedback, right? And then on the other side of so you might have three columns, right? So on the far side, the other column would be what's changing in the world? What are the constraints and the challenges that aren't working anymore compared to like
Hmm.
what I was doing? Like, what are
Hmm.
those? Because the more we understand those constraints, like, oh, even a clothing store right now, people might not want to try on clothing, so like, how are we going to deal with that? For example, like that's a form of constraint. People don't want to put the clothes on. So the minute we create a problem, the cool thing with the mind is we actually start subconsciously and consciously coming up with solutions for those things. So instead of avoiding the problems, in this case with Claire, let's just talk about like, what are some of the problems that she's running into? Number one would be it can't be in person, or I'm not seeing that it's going to be in person for the foreseeable future. So there's one problem. Another would be that maybe I can't feel the fabric. I can't see the colors in the same way. Like there's certain things that don't translate electronically. What else would you add? And go ahead, Claire, and add to us. And yeah, Brian, exactly. Like, it may be inventing, it may be tweaking, it may be coming up with a whole different business because you have done okay in what you're doing. But right now, because of COVID, huge opportunities have come up that the first person to serve that need is the one who wins, typically, right? Serves it well, is what I should say.
For the image consulting, some things that come to mind would be doing webinars, doing a YouTube channel, and teaching some concepts. So you might not really be able to see the fabrics, but you can stand out as a thought leader. You can talk about, like, there's some old concepts from the 80s we could recycle. Go ahead.
I want to stay with the problems for a second.
Yes.
Any other problems that you could see of like old world, new world, because we don't want to go into solution mode. This is actually the art of the practice, is that we're going to really understand like what's the landscape changing like, because sometimes in the problems, as we dive into them, we actually uncover the other side of it. That's actually where we get our ideas. Okay. So another problem would be people just aren't going to care. Like that would be another problem. They're not going to care.
We only care about what we're wearing from here up now, right?
All that matters is from here up for the next year and a half. That would be a problem, for an image consultant. Like maybe they're going to be paying attention to things that, so when I say that, I have to be careful not to go into solution mode. So they're not paying attention. This is how we would write that problem. They're not paying attention to the same things that they used to pay attention to. That's a problem. See? So as we start to work on, like, this is what I love to do. This is what's changed. This is what the problems are. These are what I'm like, I can't see past them. What the middle column is all about is, where do these things come together? Like, you're sort of going back and forth between the problem and the things you love to do. And you start finding these magic combinations that all of a sudden you're like, oh my gosh, like this is where we get really, really creative, because we're diving deep into things that we know, and love to do. But again, I talk a lot about paradigms. We can be stuck. If we don't look at the problems, we will remain stuck in the paradigm of what we're living in, and we'll miss the opportunities. So is this resonating? Does this make sense? Let's see. Brian said, new opportunities emerge may only be short term as well, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. So you know what? I think we have to be really careful about that one. And I have been thinking about this a lot. So I love that Brian mentioned this. I actually think that if you were to lean in further and don't allow this idea that it's short term, you'll actually do better in the long run, because I don't think we're going to go back to the old world. And the more creative you get in, like, what does the world look like after that? Because people don't have to go to work in the way that they were going to work. That will create a whole other series of businesses that don't even exist right now, folks. Like, delivery in a way that we might not even be thinking about delivery, for example. Experiences of like, what are people wanting when they can't have that interaction at work in the way that they want? Like, what new things emerge from that would be another example. Janice said,
and I think, sorry, go ahead.
You go.
I was just going to say, I think some of these are changes, right? I think the future wants to go a certain way, and the more that we keep resisting the future, then this is going to keep happening. We have a former client for the IT consulting business, and their business, what they do, is malls. It's like, okay, so you know you're doomed. And
Mm-hmm.
I will say they are kind of rethinking. Like you'll see a lot of times there's like adult learning campus that's sort of in what used to be a JC Penney's. So it's going to be things like that. The more we try to hold on to the old, right? Maybe it's I had a clothing shop and it got shut down because of COVID and now I need to get it open. Like I think there will always be some clothing shops because, like you said, the tactical, but maybe the future wants to, again, less waste, less retail space. Maybe you could have that in your house. Maybe you have pop up events. Maybe you go to shows and fairs and things where the people are already coming to the event instead of the location being the draw. So I think the future wants to be um, online, virtual, pop up, multifunction space, those kind of things. And I think the more you can line up with that instead of trying to go back to the old world in the good times and then getting squished every recession, I think
Yeah.
the better off you'll be.
Yeah. One of the things, Janice, you're mentioning about not having a lot of new clients and then realizing that you need to think about how to connect with what people care about now. 100%. Like that is exactly what we're thinking about. And, different than the exercise that we were doing for Claire, which may or may not apply and that might help you. Another thing that you can do, and this is what I used to do in my consulting way back in the beginning of my career. I was head of marketing for a company, and we would spend every 6 months we'd get together and we would do these futuristic sort of conversations. And I strongly recommend that you don't just do this by yourself, because the creativity that comes from having, a handful of people that you respect, you can do it on Zoom. It's great. But come together with a group of people that you respect, maybe some clients, maybe some people that are actually people that your mentors. So you're kind of a cross-pollination of ideas and potential. But you can spend time listing out each of the major areas that would affect your business. So like, what's going to happen with technology? What's going to happen with the way people are working, which we just talked about. Like if people aren't going to work and they're all doing a lot of stuff on the internet and Zoom, what does that look like? Or what are the problems that get created for people when they're telecommuting through Zoom? I mean, for many of us, it took us years to feel comfortable in this medium. Like right there, I see an opportunity for people who have super high anxiety, or, if you're a coach or you're a therapist, around helping people move into presenting online. There's going to be a certain population of people that are like, this is the worst thing that happened to me. So,
Mm-hmm.
Looking at what is changing in the world, how is it going to affect the different areas of your life? And as you do that and you lean into what the world might look like a year from now or 5 years from
Mm-hmm.
now, and granted, you're making it up, but all it takes is one little, aha, like, oh, I love doing this. I do think that there's an opportunity. And once we come up with some ideas, the next step is really surveying people, right? Getting surveys out
Mm-hmm.
to ask, like, is this something that people are looking for? And we may be
Mm-hmm.
a little early. That's why we're having this conversation right now. I think there's still a lot of uncertainty over the next month, but like this month would be the time to think, like, how does this play out? If this happens and then this happens and this happens. And if you aren't typically a person to think in the future, then bring some friends together who can play
Mm-hmm.
this game with you, like make a game out of it. What happens with restaurants? What happens with our gyms? What happens with our, how do we connect as human beings? What is that going to look like in the future? How can we make that more enjoyable? Maybe there's games that people start inventing, right? Not like video games for my 15-year-old, but games for people who are in their 50s and 60s who are like, how can I connect more deeply with my friends who we can't feel each other and see each other and be present? But if we have these really fun games and you could sell them, I remember not too long ago, somebody raised like $1 million because they had a funny idea of like, I don't know, throwing things at people. And it was a card game and they raised $1 million. And it was totally silly. It was like a joke that took off. But again, all you need is one idea that will satisfy something going on inside of people right now that they have lost, and it gives them a way to connect or to feel more connected to themselves. I mean, that's why I think self-help will continue to do really well, because when there's change, there's so much opportunity of people to say, I don't feel good about this change. I'm in resistance to this change. I need help knowing how to move through change. And Tina, that would be kind of a thought that I have for you with all of your gifts is she's psychic intuitive. She's going to be talking about, using pendulums as a guide. I think that's next week. And using that gift in a way that's very customized to the challenges that people are dealing with right now. Rather than business as usual, I'm going to, help you in these other ways. Maybe it's going to be your marketing is going to be changing so that it's speaking to these problems right now. A lot of people haven't made those changes yet on their website. But like, gosh, when you go to a website and it's already speaking to like, this is what's going on in the world and this is how I'm going to help you. This is what I've done. I've rearranged things because I care so much about your mental health, or, making sure that you look good. Or I know that the challenges are unique right now. We got to focus on Waist Up. Come join and have fun with Waist Up. Like, people are going to be like, oh my gosh, she's like reading my mind. That's exactly why I'm here. So here's my rant.
I think that's great. And I think it's honestly something, maybe with the exception of, Steve Jobs, some of the Silicon Valley folks, I think we as a country have kind of lost that in the 50s and 60s. Not that I was around, but the way I perceived that it was, there was a lot of like optimism, a lot of like, you think about Epcot with Tomorrowland and all of the cartoons and the science fiction, we were all going to have flying. Where's my flying car, by the way?
Chitty Chitty Bang Bang. Like, I mean, I'll date myself. That was my favorite movie, like, ever. I wanted the flying car.
Yeah, we're still behind on that. Self-driving we're working on. Flying is not in the cards yet. But it's that kind of, and I will admit that this is not a strength of mine. This is a place that I need to focus of like, well, what is possible? What is coming? And that vision, even if you're off, right? It's so helpful. And you're exactly right that the brainstorming, this might be something that you might want to put together is like a brainstorming thing where we all kind of mastermind and say, well, what changes do we think are coming? Perfect example, I did a connection with a realtor who is in a networking group that I'm in down here. And I said, a lot of second homes down here. We just bought a house. Are the values going to go down? And her, again, nobody knows what's going to happen, but her attitude was completely different. She's like, are you kidding? She's from New York. A lot of New Yorkers on this side of Florida. It's a little bit of a shock, but it's okay. She's like, everybody in New York wants to get out of the city. They want like a remote hideaway. And if you're going to get out of the city, why would you not want to come to South Florida? It's so warm. It's so beautiful. And to some degree, if she believes that's true, then she's going to attract those people who do feel the same way, who are thinking that way. That's what her marketing is going to be about. So, and how many clients do you need as a realtor to be a top producer? You only, I would think, can only handle a handful of deals at a time. So even if that's a small percentage of the world, if she makes that her niche of, hey, the next time something happens, don't get stuck in New York, have a place outside the city that is yours that you can get to in sunny South Florida, get away from the cold. Oh, yeah. So it's those kind of, and that's why it's good to have multiple people come in, because I kind of had an idea of what was going to happen. She brought in this other idea. I'm like,
right.
That's a really good possibility.
And sometimes too, I would say, even when you mention real estate. So real estate is a perfect example of massive disruption. Like, they've already had a lot with Zillow and other sort of forms of selling your house. But like, sometimes it's helpful to do the futuristic stuff, just like we're doing here, in somebody else's business and get the like creative juices flowing. Because in real estate, immediately I think, if I were a struggling photographer right now, like, no question about it, I would be creating virtual experiences in the homes to the level that haven't been offered traditionally. So like going into houses that are listed for sale and
Mm.
providing incredible videos of like every step of the way so that you could literally, with a home inspection and that video, you could feel comfortable buying that house sight unseen,
Mm-hmm.
like that kind
Mm-hmm.
of thing. That's the kind of opportunities that we're talking about, like disruptive behaviors that people are like, of course we need that, because
Mm-hmm.
there are going to be lots of people who would appreciate that kind of service. And that's what we're
Mm-hmm.
looking for, right? Is these,
Mm-hmm.
what's changed, how does it affect it? And then how might we help people in that transition? And it comes,
Mm-hmm.
sometimes it's structural, so the product changes. And sometimes it's just marketing because it's really that easy, and if you're worried, keep your copy that you have now. You probably won't ever need it again, but copy it and then move
Mm-hmm.
in with some new copy that's adjusted to what's going on, and speak to people and the pain points that they're feeling right now that you can help them with. Like that's an easy change, like that takes almost no time at all.
Mm-hmm.
Tina was saying, how can I be of service? And this question
Mm-hmm.
brings me in the way of coming up with new ideas. How can I be in service? Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Oh, one other thing I wanted to add to that is, and I made this mistake on this business, so I'm speaking from experience. Start with a proof of concept, because this goes back to the DISC profile. I'm a C, so I'm like, all right, I'm going to set up a new business. I need a business license. I need a legal entity. I need to figure out pricing. I need a website. I need cards. It's like, you need customers.
Oh, wow. Really?
Like, what? Like, no, I'll get customers when I have all the admin stuff taken care of. Like, by then you'll be sick of your business, you'll be out of money, you'll have given up. So as you're brainstorming these ideas, and you said this, Leisa, is as you pick up a couple, put it out on Facebook, survey your audience, see what people like, see what takes off, instead of going off in a direction like I did of like, well, this is what people need to know. Just because
Mm-hmm.
it's what people need, it may or may not be what people want, and people in general may not be your people. So I think it's really important, like, just come up with the idea, throw it out there. If it makes money, then worry about the business license and the
Yes.
liability insurance and the YouTube channel and the this and the that.
So
But proof
good.
of concept needs to come first. It'll save
Yeah.
you a lot of money.
Well, I am so glad you brought that up, because one of the things that I do, even before I write or I go off on something that I'm going to spend, a lot of time on, not knowing if it's going to be helpful or not, and you see me do this all the time, is I survey everyone. I ask questions. Even today's conversation came because people were interested. And thank you, Brian, for being here. Um, but so I lost my train of thought.
I love he says, my family's tired of listening to me. Like, this is why we have each other. We can geek out on this stuff. The
I'm
community.
like, I paid attention to the note, and this is what I'm always afraid of. Oh, interesting. I'm like, what was I talking about? That's how fast it goes. I feel like squirrel syndrome. But proof of concept. So the idea is that the cool thing about social media, whether it be Instagram or Twitter or Facebook, which is the one that I like to get feedback on because it's so fast. You literally post, and then like in a minute you get something, But what happens, and this is what I've done for years, my secret for all the research or what to focus on, is literally writing some kind of summary, very short, like, is anyone interested in X, Y, and Z? And then leave it more open-ended and just sit and watch what happens. You don't have to give a whole long sob story. You don't have to talk about vulnerability. You can just say, I'm exploring something. Is this interesting to you? And what may happen is you get a few comments and you take the post down and then you adjust it a little bit more. You're like, oh, this is what people are interested in. So you start again. Like, it's amazing how you can literally make Facebook into your own personal, like, feedback source of seeing what are the things that people are struggling with. What are the things that new needs that have been created that they don't know how to solve yet? And yet you're asking a question that's close enough that they'll give you information and help you, look into something. Like, most of the time, I don't know what people are going to love. Just want to be really clear. I don't know until I get validation from others. And there's nothing like Facebook to see if there's an opportunity quickly if that you might want to dive into.
I would wonder, there's got to be an opportunity for some sort of virtual childcare, and this won't work with a toddler. But, once you get to middle school, teenagers, something where, eyes on you, I've got a group of people, or maybe, one or two students, and I've got mom and dad on text. And like I'm teaching Spanish lessons because mom and dad don't speak Spanish. I'm teaching, I don't know, flute lessons, right? Like again, go back to the skills. What is it you know how to do? Because over the summer even, I can pretty much guarantee there's going to be like a lot of camps have been canceled. Yeah. A lot of summer vacations have been canceled. And a lot of grown-ups still have to work. So if you can offer something where an hour a day, or maybe even an hour twice a week, I will put my eyes on your child and engage them in something. Yeah, and then you just know, like, mommy's work calls are at 10 on Tuesday and Thursday because that's when juniors, online Spanish lesson is. Yeah. So something like that, where there's a huge need for parents to have something, and maybe you can't physically remove the children from the property, but if you had a group of 5 and you had the ability to text mom like, hey, kid number 3 is off the reservation.
I mean, it's great. Like these are the sorts of things where they just kind of come out of the creativity. We are getting brainstorming would be good. And then Brian, I actually want to touch on what you're talking about, because this is something that is very great point. It's a fine line between bouncing off ideas and giving ideas away. Quite frankly, you don't have to worry. Like business owners who have been doing this for a while, the proof is in the actual bringing the business together. It is not in the idea. Ideas are a dime a dozen. Don't ever worry about people stealing your ideas. It's just not that isn't the world we live in anymore. It's about, can you actually bring it into reality and make money doing it? Lots of good ideas. Very few people are willing to bring it the distance.
Well, and how often have you watched a movie where you're like, I'm pretty sure that this is the same script as this other movie we watched 3 weeks ago? Like somebody shopped this idea around Hollywood and 3 different teams of writers took the same idea and made a movie out of it. So even if they steal your idea, they're going to execute on it differently. And this again goes back to something that you teach is, do you want to get in scarcity mentality? Mm-hmm. Or do you want to get an abundance mentality? Mm-hmm. So yes, there are times when legal structures make sense. As you get more established, you want to protect what you've built. But an idea, I don't think it's really worth protecting.
Not anymore.
Once you start making money, then protect what you've got.
Protect. Once you've proven your concept, when you show that you can actually bring this thing to market and people are willing to pay for it, it's when things change. But up until then, I think that I would never miss out on an opportunity to brainstorm or pick other people's brains about an idea and getting their feedback. I would never hesitate, because that's going to cause me to know if it's something that I should be focused on. And Lisa's, when you said just how easy it is to get sidetracked or it's just don't have to worry about.
Mm-hmm. Another thing my husband and I always say, and this is again kind of about sort of recognizing where you are in history and guessing at what's coming. We always joke that information wants to be free. So with the IT consulting business, he does so much training. He gives so much away, all kinds of webinars. So like a lot of times we'll do a webinar for that business and he literally tells people everything. But there's always one in the audience that is like, will you just do it for me? I don't want to figure it out. Or we will give away most of it, but maybe not all of it. So information wants to be free. We're in the information age. You probably don't own information. This great idea that you came up with, probably somebody else has come up with it. It's all already out there. What people will pay for is for you to implement it for them, for you to give them a skill. And Leisa, this is actually something that it's been on my list of things that keeps popping in my head to mention to you. So now it's a perfect opportunity, because I've heard you say This is my life's work in this book, and I'm giving it away for $18. Yeah,
Not
but the information,
really.
well, and what you do, in my mind, the magic part about what you do are those intuitive sessions where you're getting into the person's head and helping them figure out exactly what the issue is, exactly what's been removing that, and sort of removing that thorn from the lion's paw. People will pay a lot of money for that when they understand actually that you can do that and what that is, and that's not easily replicatable. I don't know how it is in California, but on the East Coast we don't have people, like, there's a lot less magic on this side of the country. So,
No,
so
and I
that's
say that
really
because I think it was a big leap when I was like, I'm going to do this. I'm going to give everything that up to that moment in time that I've learned, the questions, all of this stuff in the Mindful Millionaire. It was a leap for me for the exact reason that Brian said, hey, do we have to be careful about this? And yeah, there will probably be people out there copying things from the model I've created. And I'm like, great, I've inspired. Like flattery, Chanel says flattery is like the highest compliment. It's like copying is going to happen no matter what. And it is about building brand recognition. It is about building relationships. When you give things away for free, let's face it, people are intrigued. They're curious. If what you give away isn't very good, be really careful because you're going to be judged by that. Like if they're going to be like, well, that wasn't that great, so why would I pay? That's why there's a lot of people that say, give your best stuff away for free, or like what I did in the Mindful Millionaire, like go ahead, give what people have paid thousands of dollars for $17.99 and trust, just like you said, that it will create something else. Like I love growing and expanding. And so when you put something out there like that too, it opens the door to new possibilities, and something that could be created from the book. But I want to make sure and wrap things up because we've come to the end. I love these comments. As Sarah said, everyone in their life has $1 million idea at some point. I love that, Claire. So true. I think we do. The challenge is like bringing it to market, being able to figure out how to sell. And we didn't say this in the beginning, but I want to be really crystal clear. I am seeing more success online. I'm in a group with like 6,000 people in like a membership community learning about that all over the world. And these folks are selling like crazy. So any beliefs that your opportunity has gone away, maybe opportunity in one small area of life, but not in all areas. There is opportunity for money to be made, perhaps even more money than you were making before, but you're going to need to be creative. You're going to need to make sure that your limiting beliefs don't run the show and that you're not reacting. You're not getting stuck in guilt, blame, and shame of like, oh, if only I had known, if only I had done something different. No. We're going to focus on the future. We're going to focus on reinvention when necessary. And maybe our business is fine right now, but what if we used what we're talking about here today to actually find another opportunity that you add on to what you're doing? I mean, that would be another thing that could come up. That, again, I love that idea, Claire. There are so many opportunities. If we can, surround ourselves with like-minded people, make sure that we're not hanging out with the naysayers all the time because they will just chip away at your soul and your dreams. So be very careful about that.
Yeah.
Anything else you want to add real quick?
It's just that at the end of the day, we humans are interdependent. And I think this may kind of go along with sort of the American history, this idea of like we're going to go off in the woods and we're going to live alone and we're going to be doomsday preppers and we're just going to get our bunker and have all of our stuff and we'll never need anything from the outside world. It's like, no. Like you can do that for a couple of weeks, but we're and some of us just have done that for a couple of weeks. But at the end of the day, we're interdependent. And like that kind of stinks because it means you're probably not going to be able to like make your own clothes and grow your own food and never interact with another human. But it's good because that means even in the zombie apocalypse, right? If you watch any like dystopian movies, even in the zombie apocalypse, they always go into town and they're trading with each other. So the skills of sales, right? It doesn't matter if you're selling coaching or if you're, selling
Some
canned
tomatoes.
goods where the label came off 5 years ago, right? Like these skills go with you. We like it or not, we're truly interdependent, which means there's always an opportunity to bring a product or a service to someone. And it's just understanding, like not hanging on to the old and wanting it to come back and fighting for it, but releasing that and looking at, okay, realistically, where are we? Where will this go? And you won't get it right every time. But again, the more we kind of brainstorm, share, and kind of get that the good, another kind of American mentality of like that optimism for the future, that tomorrowland, that what what can we bring, from sci-fi movies into the present?
Yeah,
The good
totally.
kind of sci-fi movies into the present instead of the bad kind of sci-fi movies. So I do think there's a lot of opportunity. I think the sooner that we release the drama of what is and start to look at the possibilities, the better off we'll be.
Beautiful. Beautifully said. Thank you, everyone, for being here, for hanging out with us. We really appreciate it. And fun conversation. Who knew that we'd be talking about brainstorming? I knew it'd go to very important places. So, but yeah, maybe we've got some groups forming, and that would be wonderful. Like even just put it out in the community. Who else would like to brainstorm about future stuff? Or maybe you want coaches who are all in different areas of coaching, to help each other. So Janice, I think that would be awesome. And yeah, this has been super fun. I love these conversations. Thank you so much for being a participant and showing up and showing us the love. We really, really appreciate it.